everyone? Welcome to another episode of Nolzur's Marvelous Tutorials with RealmSmith. First of all, happy Halloween, folks, this week. This is a special Halloween edition of our show. Tonight, we are going to be painting the werewolves from Wave 4 of the WizKids D&D Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures line. And we're very excited to also be live not only on Twitch but on Facebook tonight. Facebook has changed their rules, and so now we can multi-stream and simulcast to both Twitch and to Facebook at the same time, and we're super excited. Thanks to our partners as usual, D&D for hosting us on their channel tonight, to WizKids for providing us the miniatures and giving us this opportunity to share their awesome minis with people, and then as well Vallejo, of course, which we'll be using to paint everything tonight and is our sponsor. So we're super excited. It's going to be really relaxed and chill. It's getting a little, speaking of chill, it's getting a little colder here in Canada, so I'm wearing my hoodie tonight, but it is all good. We're very excited to get started here, so let's jump right in after a couple announcements. First announcement is, if you missed our Kickstarter, you can still check it out and still grab some stuff for the rest of this week until Thursday. On Thursday, we're shutting off pre-orders for some of the items from our Kickstarter, but even though our Kickstarter closed at the end of August, you can still get some of that stuff by jumping on to realmsmith.tv/Kickstarter and then click the Missed the Campaign button, and you can take a look at everything that we have, which we're super excited about. I am watching chat both in Facebook and on Twitch, so if you have any questions or comments or thoughts on, if you've done this miniature before and you've got some ideas of how potentially it could be done differently or how you did it and all that kind of stuff, please pipe in and have a listen and have a chat, and I will be here to answer any questions and be with you guys. People are already starting to chat in the Twitch, which is awesome, of course, as usual. Hey, Mikey, welcome, and of course, Declasser, good to see you as usual. I don't know where I'm trying to figure out how to see the chat on Facebook here. I don't know why I'm not getting it. There it is. That makes sense. My window's just a little small, which is okay. All right, there we go. Kelly Preston, of course, is here. That's awesome. She says werewolves are one of her favorite monsters. That's great. So, like I said, I am in the comments and I am in the chat. So, say hi and let me know what you guys are thinking throughout the whole thing. You guys ready to jump right in? We're so excited to do so. All right. So, of course, tools of the trade as usual. We've got werewolves. We are doing both werewolves tonight. I am going a little nuts here, and I was gonna batch paint them both gray, but I've decided actually to do one brown and one gray, so we'll kind of get an idea of how to do both sorts of fur styles and colors. We're using some Vallejo brushes here. We'll be using a 0, a 1, and a 2, as well as a Vallejo dry brush. Of course, a cup of water for rinsing your brushes and cleaning them. Some paper towel, as usual, for wiping off and dry brushing, and then a palette, which we will be using for obviously mixing colors and for just getting them out of the bottles and onto our painting surface, which we're very excited about. Paints we'll be using, I actually sent these out for the first time today, ahead of it today. We have bone white, sepia wash, leather brown, black wash, off-white. We're going to be using black for the eyes as well as the noses, heavy sienna for some of the leather stuff, gunmetal for all the metal bits, of course, heavy blue for some of the garments. We're going to be using heavy brown as a base for the brown werewolf, polished gold and glorious gold together for some of the golden bits, heavy blue-gray as a base for the skin, or the fur, I should say, of the one werewolf. Of course, glorious gold, orange fire and moon yellow for eyes, tan for the gums, fresh blood for that nastiness that one guy is holding a hand that he has taken from some poor commoner. And then, of course, rosy flesh, which will be used for that hand, and then also on the gums as well, which we're super excited about. All right, folks, let's jump right in. I've got some mood lighting, some reddish mood lighting for Halloween. Okay, so these are our two miniatures. This is the first one. This is the werewolf. This looks like it used to be a commoner in their kind of natural human form, and then obviously changed into a werewolf after that. He's got some cloth and a belt around his waist and so on. This one, on the other hand, is a little larger, a little thicker, and he looks like he maybe used to be an adventurer or a guard. He's got some scale mail on the back. Of course, some garments left over around his waist. He's got some pouches, and he's got some poor guy's hand in his hand, which we will make gruesome and bloody because it is Halloween. I think I've decided I'm going to make this one the brown one and this one the gray one. So we're going to start on the gray one. We're going to base coat this. And what I'm going to do, I was going to do a batch painting tutorial where we paint them both gray and show you how to do that. I'm not going to do that this time, actually, because I'm going to do them different colors. We'll save batch painting for another time, but I will paint a coat on this and then move to this one. And that's a good way of saving time, too, between two miniatures, so you're not necessarily waiting for them. All right. Okay, jumping right in. Here we go. We're going to start with a heavy blue-gray. It's here somewhere. Heavy blue-gray is a Vallejo paint, of course. It is one of their extra opaque colors. And they are great for base coating. So it isn't much darker than the actual primer that is on these miniatures. I think Wave 4 had Vallejo primer on them, so we're just going to have to kind of be smart with the way that we base coat this, make sure we catch all the areas, because like, as you can see, as I put on this gray base coat, it's not far from the original color. I'm going to go ahead and base coat the entire thing. I'm not worried right now about the different areas. I'm just trying to get a solid, cool base coat on here. All right. Okay. What I'm going to do, folks, for November, and this is brand new now, and now that we're on Twitch and Facebook, which is great, what we're going to do is we're going to start putting out a month in advance kind of the schedule. So I'm going to put all of November up at the beginning of November. Probably in the next couple of days we'll release the schedule that we're going to be using for all of the miniatures we'll be doing for that month. So that way you guys can get the miniatures ahead of time, your local game store, order them, whatever you need to do in order to get them on your table. And then I'm going to try also and release the paint colors ahead of time as well, so that you folks have the paint colors you need if you want to paint along, because I know a lot of you folks have been asking for that for a while. And so now that the Kickstarter's out of the way for the most part, and we're on to fulfilling, and we're caught up on our boxes, I can start to do some of those little kind of fun things that you guys have been asking for in this show. So speaking of adventure boxes, if you guys are interested in checking out our adventure boxes, you can do that at RealmSmith.tv below. And like I said, I think now at this point, there's more information on our adventure boxes on our Kickstarter page than there is on our webpage for now, until we redo the webpage, which is part of a stretch goal that we had. So we will absolutely start to... I'm getting a little warm in this sweater. It's going to be difficult to take off if I wanted to take it off. But at this point, you know, you can go to the Kickstarter and really find out about everything that we do. So again, realmsmith.tv/Kickstarter, and you can, even though it's past, there's a lot of info on there if you guys are interested in finding out more. Okay, so decent base coat, that's it. I have base coated. We don't do a lot of smaller minis. We do a lot of bigger minis on this show, but that is completely, well, for the most part, base coated. I'm probably going to come back after it's dry and find that I've missed a bunch of spots. But for now, that is more than good enough. I'm going to let that base coat dry and then go in and touch it up if I need to. That shouldn't take too long. All right. On to my other dude, who is going to be the brownish werewolf. Let's see here. We're going to throw some heavy brown in here. Heavy brown, again, is another Vallejo color. It is an extra opaque color as usual. They're a bit thicker, and they go in basically on one coat, which is nice. Lots of chatter today. Lots of folks watching. I love it. We've got... If you guys have a question too, make sure that you write question and then write your question afterwards so that I know. Of course, questions are always allowed, TJ. Oso, nice to see you. Love that one of the werewolves is holding an arm. Did you airbrush the primer on or spray can? So TJ, just so you know, all the minis from WizKids, the Nolzur's line, come pre-primed already. So I literally took these right out of the pack. I took these right out of the package, and I am painting them directly out of the package, which is great. I am getting really hot, folks. So once this is done, I'm going to just step away real quick. I'm going to take my sweater off, and my heat just kicked in the studio, so I'm going to have to turn that off as well. So I'm just going to need to step away for a second. This is what happens, folks, live. What are you going to do? Roll with it. Roll with the punches. But it's probably quite loud for you folks right now. Question, are there different variations of werewolves? So that is a question from Phoenix Wolf King. I don't know if there's actually different variations in D&D of werewolves. I think werewolf is a variation of a lycanthrope. And so I think that, I know that there's wereboars and werebears and wererats, weretigers, all kinds of, I've even heard of weresharks in previous editions, which was always kind of weird for me. But I don't know if there's different variations of werewolves. I know there is a single, I know that there's a single entry in the Monsters Manual, but maybe that's a good question for the community. If anybody of you guys know if there are different variations of werewolves, that'd be great to know. Okay, so I am going to stay away from the armor and from some of the areas I know I'm going to be painting large colored areas. Don't need heavy brown in those areas. But we want to make sure we get all of the under on the hair, sorry, the fur, I should say, around his neck. Be sure we cover really well. I am going to base coat the hand, even though I'm going to color it later, or paint it later, I should say, not color. Paint it later with some rosy flesh, and that is the hand he's carrying in his hand, not his actual hand, which is pretty gruesome and kind of perfect for around Halloween. Okay. I always dilute my paints just a touch, just to help them to flow a bit better. There we go. All right. Again, I want to say hi to everyone in Facebook as well. This is the first time we are live on Facebook as well with Nolzur's. As I mentioned earlier, Facebook changed their rules, so now we can simulcast to multiple platforms along with Facebook, which is very exciting for us and all our fans who would love to watch us on multiple. I know Kelly Preston's been looking forward to watching us on Facebook for a while now, so he can do that now, which is great. Okay. I may also get my mini holder because this cramps up your hands a little bit with the smaller minis when you're holding them. Okay, so that is pretty well base coated. I'm going to leave that. As you can see, I've put on a brown base coat all over this one. I'm going to put him down and just step away for 1 sec, folks. I will be right back. Speedy. Question, Phoenix Wolf King says, what's your favorite lycanthrope? That's a great question. What is my favorite lycanthrope? I think my favorite lycanthrope Would have to be... I love werebears, actually. For me, werebears are a really fun lycanthrope. They're big and beefy, and they're a bit more good aligned, which is kind of the characters that I like to play. If I were to play a PC that was a lycanthrope, I think I'd play a werebear. In our noob stream, in Tales from the Shattered Shield, which we play more or less once a month with our noobs, one of our guys, Thorok, is a blood hunter, and he chose the way of the lycanthrope, which allows him to change into a werebear. And he still carries his axe and all that fun stuff, so it's pretty awesome. I'd say werebear is my favorite. What about you guys? Look at that, still had a conversation while we were gone. Sweater's off, heat will go off, we're all good. Everything is good in the world. Okay, so looking back at my gray werewolf, and there are a couple little patches of primer, but I'm actually not too concerned about it. I'm gonna go ahead now and do an overall wash on this of black. Add a bit of a black wash on there, and then that'll bring out the details a lot more on that. Easy AK says, if you're taking votes on November Minis Shambling Mound, all right, you asked for it. Shambling Mound will be in November. So far for November, we are thinking Shambling Mound. We are thinking Bronze Dragon, because we did the brass. You guys wanted to see the bronze, and the Wyvern. Wyvern, Shambling Mound, Bronze Dragon are the three so far. There are 4 weeks in November, so if you guys do some voting, we'll see what the majorities are, and then we'll go from there. With this black wash, I want it to be fairly heavy because I want his... I used heavy blue-gray. It's a mid-tone. Even actually, I'd say even on the lighter side. So I actually started from a mid, and then I'm allowing the black wash to create the dark tones and the dark range on the skin. That's kind of my tactic here. We'll see how it works. I don't know how that'll go. But again, I'm using the black wash from the Vallejo line. Of course, black washes, for those that are new to painting, or washes, I should say, in general, are used to add depth and shadow to your minis, because it is designed to seep into the recesses and again, add shadow. So I'm going to do that. Painting it on fairly thick, like I said, because I want to darken it quite a bit. I do want this to be my dark sort of coat. And you can see how that is coming along nicely. And I'm literally doing an all-over wash because most of this werewolf's skin, or fur I should say, there's skin and fur I guess, is exposed. So there, that is. So as you can see, I've added a wash all over. I'm going to let that dry now. And then we are going to do some dry brushing and some other stuff. That actually might be a bit light still for me. So I may actually come back and do a second wash on this guy, perhaps. And this wash on this one, or the base coat on this one, is still drying. So just going to give it a minute here. Question: what is the drow with the spider bottom half? Yeah, Drider. We could. I wonder if I have a. I think I have a Drider. If you guys want a Drider, that might be an option. I haven't done one of those yet on the show. We're gonna wait for this to dry, and then we're gonna use a sepia wash on it. If that's not dark enough, I might go black wash as well, or mix them. But we'll see. So I'm gonna let that dry for a sec. Actually, get on my trusty fan, and then this will go faster. These are all. This fan is always super handy if you guys want to get one. I grabbed this one for like 15 bucks or something at a kind of a dollar store, sort of bargain store. It was great. And then hopefully by the time I'm done this guy down here, washes tend to take a while to dry. So I tend to use washes as early in this process as I can to allow the time to dry so I can show you guys and work through stuff more often. More votes for November, folks. We're taking votes for what we'll be painting in November today. Can be from any of the waves of D&D's Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures range by WizKids. See how quick that is? It's so good. Okay, so I'm going to get some sepia shade. I'm going to see how this wash works. This is my favorite wash from the Vallejo line. Just I use it for so many different things. Just love the way that it goes on and what it does to the surface. Let's see. Yes, it is dark enough. So I'm going to use this wash as for the brown werewolf. What's this thing called? It's Sunday. It's been a long weekend, busy weekend. Lots of haunted houses, and had a Halloween party last night. My girlfriend Melanie and I dressed up as Day of the Dead folks. It was cool. Very fun. Again, for this wash, you want to make sure it goes on thick, but you don't want it to clog details. You don't want it to go on so thick that it pools so much in a crevice that it fills that crevice. You don't want that. You just want it to be dark enough. You know what? Maybe I'll give you a bit more of a close-up here. There we go. So we want to make sure that I forgot to get my little miniature holder, into the recesses as much as possible here. Now I am just using sepia. It is dark enough. I may come back and add a black wash, depending on how it looks when it's dried, but we'll decide when we get to that point. Sure, I'm going to add sepia also to some other areas of the miniature as we go, especially the leather brown areas. But you can see I've just added a wash to all the brown areas on here, like that. Okay, just going to set that one down. We're going to go back to this guy, see how he's doing. Pretty good, I think. I think I also may want a little darker, like I said. Don't know yet. I may come back in with another coat of wash once this is dry. Shambling Mound and a Remoraz. Ooh, I have painted a Remoraz before. I do have a tutorial, footage of the tutorial that I haven't posted yet, so maybe I could do both. Maybe we can do Shambling Mound here, and then I'll finally post that tutorial footage as well. Mikey says that the video audio is a little spotty. Is that the case with anybody else? Please let me know. I saw Tiefling, Gilth. Oh, this just died, I think. First time. I've never charged it. Lasted me a while. Almost 18 episodes. All right, I think I'm going to do one more coat of wash. I'm going to try and do it now while the other wash is still a little wet. I think it'll be okay. We're about to find out. Yeah, it looks like it's okay. Just one more coat of black wash on this guy, because I do want to darken it a little bit more. nice and dark now. We're just going to let that sit for a bit. Back to our brown one. Not necessarily loving how light it is, but we might be okay. I think I may want to add a black wash to that as well. Well, let's let those washes dry a bit more. I'm going to put him down, and I'm going to grab my trusty Monsters Manual as I do kind of every week. Let's take a look at Werewolves, folks. Yeah, Mikey says, back to blowing on minis. It was an ongoing joke back in the day when I used to say that this was the most manly way of drying minis there is. We're back to it. Carrion Crawler, that's another good one. All right, all right. Werewolves. It's probably under, I think it's under Lycanthrope. Lycanthrope. Lycanthropes. Well, that's scary. Wereboar, wererat, werewolf. A werewolf is a savage predator. In its humanoid form, werewolf has heightened senses of fiery temper and a tendency to eat rare meat. Its wolf form is a fearsome predator, but its hybrid form is more terrifying by far. So yeah, I think werewolves in D&D can be a full wolf or a hybrid form. A furred and well-muscled humanoid body topped by a ravening wolf's head. A werewolf can wield weapons in hybrid form, though it prefers to tear foes apart with its powerful claws and bite. Most werewolves flee civilized lands not long after becoming afflicted. Those that reject the curse fear family. Curse fear what will happen if they remain among their friends and family. Those that embrace the curse fear discovery and the consequences of their murderous acts in the wild. Werewolves form packs that also include wolves and direwolves. So freaking cool. There's the werebear. We've got the wereboar, wererat, weretiger, which is so cool. And then, of course, the werewolf, which we're doing tonight for Halloween. Challenge 3. Of course, they can change. The werewolf can use its action to polymorph into a wolf, humanoid, hybrid, or into a wolf, or back into its true form, which is humanoid. Its statistics, other than its AC, are the same in each form. They have a bite, claws, and a spear, which obviously they use a spear if they're in humanoid form. They have keen hearing and smell. Awesome. So cool. Okay, I'm going to start to base coat some of the areas that are on these minis. I was going to use the blue that I have on this gray one. I may still do that, but I think I want to use it as well on here just to add some contrast, because right now he's got, I was going to do this kind of leather brown for his kind of skirt thing, and I don't think I'm going to do that because it'll just blend with the rest of the brown. So I'm going to use heavy blue. This is again an extra opaque color from Vallejo. And they go on in one coat and are awesome. These are my favorites. Phoenix Wolf King says, I love lycanthropes. Me too. Lord Ravenloft says, yay, first time making it live. Welcome, Strahd. Mind flayers could be an option as well. I like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to use my same brush for base coating the blue, I think. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just switch to a brush that has a bit better of a tip on it. Touch of water, even on the extra opaques. Help them flow, and then here we go. I'd love to hear how many of you folks would like to paint with me live. If that's something that you guys are interested in, because I will do, if that's something you guys like, or if you like the VODs, because then you can come watch this the first time and then come back and kind of take your time, that's cool too. But if painting live with us is something that's important to you, then we can try and do what we can to prep you folks by, you know, posting colors ahead of time, and of course the schedule like we're going to do ahead as well, so that you know what's coming and kind of prep ahead of time. But if that's something you want to do, please leave comments in either the VOD or live now while we're painting here, because that would be great to know. I want to make sure that you get the underside of the garment here, otherwise known as the undercarriage. A little tricky to get in there, but we're making it work. Also, because this base area is so small, I am kind of rubbing off some of the brown color on the skin in some areas, which isn't a huge problem because it's not a huge problem because we will come back in and touch that up later, especially with the dry brushing stage and so on. If it's a big area and we think we want to, we'll do it with some base coats because they are still dry in the palette, and we can do that fairly easily. But the blue actually looks quite nice with the tone of fur that we're looking at. Lord Ravenloft says, I'd love to follow it live, but it falls during supper hours. Yeah, I get that for some people for sure. It's a little difficult. Here as well, but again, of course, a lot of our viewers are on the West Coast, and so this was the slot that D&D Twitch had available for us. So we took it. Okay, so that's the blue on that one. Put that aside. And I'm also going to do blue, I think, on this one as well. Even though I'd like to do a different color, this is what I pulled. So I'm going to work with what was in our list. And I just painted blue into an area that isn't supposed to be blue because it's supposed to be kind of skin color. So I just got a brush I haven't used yet, and I am wetting it a little bit and whisking out the paint in that kind of leg gap that exists, because there's little holes here, little holes in the garment that let the skin, the fur show through. So I want to make sure we still have those, and I painted right into it, not thinking. And I find a lot of mistakes can be fixed that way. Just grabbing an unused brush and kind of soaking the paint up once you've already got it kind of down. It's really hard not to get it into these little holes here. I am not being very successful with trying not to do that. I will wash this garment again with a black wash. This is something obviously I could have done before I did the first black wash, but I wanted to kind of test how dark it would make the miniature. There we go. This center area is supposed to be like a leather color, so I am going to do that. I'm trying to get some of that garment in the back, but it's not super, or under, but it's not super important to me to do so. There we go. Jack says, I rarely get to watch live, but paint list helps either way. Okay, great. Good, I'll do that. Okay. All right. So that works. Is there any, there is some fabric between the belts, so I want to make sure I get that. Because we're just going to paint those belts over and it'll be fine. Okay, and that wash is still wet around the head, so we want to continue to allow that to dry. Back to our other friend. Let's see. Okay, wash is almost dry on this one. I'm actually just whisking a little bit of the wash out that's pooled a little bit, just so it's not super. All right. I think I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna base coat the armor around his chest area. So that is gonna be gunmetal. And I kind of researched a little bit of wolf kind of fur before I started. Just took a look at some pictures. Obviously, wolf fur tends to be multicolored or toned. The brown ones tend to have some gray and things in them. So I'm going to see what I can do to kind of simulate that. But here I'm using gunmetal, which is a Vallejo paint, one of the regular paints. And it is one of my favorite metallics that Vallejo has. It's a bit of a darker kind of metal, and I figured this guy's been out running around all night, given the fact that he already has a hand in his possession. So, you know, a dirty kind of tarnished, darker metal is all right for me. Like I said, I imagine this guy was like a guard or an adventurer who was bitten by, another werewolf and is now succumbed to the curse. I do love the fact that he's wearing kind of like half scale mail that is kind of ripped apart in the transformation. Very cool. I think that's all of it. There is also some metal in the buckles and such on his belt. I am going to wait on those until I've painted those belts. There is buckles as well on this one, which again, I'm going to wait until that happens. So, speaking of which, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to base coat these belts. I'm going to use a bit of a smaller brush. This is a 0 Vallejo, and I'm going to grab a heavy sienna for this one. Hello to everyone watching on Facebook as well. Again, questions, comments, we are here to answer. The Griffin and the Bullet. Okay, so good news about the Bullet, George. We've already done a Bullet tutorial, and it has been uploaded to the D&D Twitch, sorry, the D&D YouTube, official D&D YouTube channel. I think we also have it on the RealmSmith YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/RealmSmith. Check that, because the Bullet, it was a fun one. We've already done that. So there you go. And the Griffin, I did a long time ago. I did do a tutorial on the Griffin. It's also on our page, youtube.com/RealmSmith. You can check both of those out. Griffin wasn't with using Vallejo paints, but it's an older one, but it's done. So you can check that there as well. Speaking of tutorials and live stuff, we're going to be at PAX Unplugged. I forgot to mention that in the announcements. We're taking this show live, as we have to a number of shows before. We were at Origins live in June, and basically what that means is we hold classes on the show floor in the Vallejo booth, and we teach you folks how to paint miniatures for 2 hours at a time. We do 3 a day. And so if you'd like to be live at a show painting with us, we will be in Philadelphia at PAX Unplugged in December. That is December 5th to 8th. Please, if you're in the area, if you plan to be at the show, please stop by, join a class, a master class, and paint with us. There's a lot of fun miniatures. We got tons of fun stuff that we'll be painting, so please join us. The way that you register is the show floor. The exhibit hall opens at, and the miniatures hall. We're actually in the miniatures hall, but it's right beside the exhibitor hall. We're basically connected to it, and I think we're near the WizKids booth. Anyways, doors open at 10 o'clock a.m. You guys can kind of rush in, you know, and just get to the Vallejo booth as soon as you can to sign up for those events. It will be limited. We have 40 seats per class, and we've been selling out like crazy at past shows. We did it at PAX last year in workshop form. We've done it at 2 Origins in the past. So anyways, they sell fast, so make sure that you're there early. If you have to line up a little bit, probably not a bad idea, just to make sure that you get a spot, because it goes really quickly. And then we'll basically do registration from 10 to 10:30 when we actually start our first session. Again, I'm using heavy sienna. Heavy sienna is another extra opaque, and I'm painting all of the belt kind of texture on here, belt objects. So straps, and in this form, sorry, on this miniature, it's all the belty areas. Belty. Just totally made up a word. All the belty areas. Okay, so that is that. I'm also, I think I'm going to do his glove that color as well, because usually it's like a leather, light leather, when it was the gray one, but I actually want to use this sepia on the glove here. I'm also considering using this, sorry, not sepia, heavy sienna. I might also consider using heavy sienna on the fur around his neck, kind of his mane. Perhaps. Got to remember that his wolf fingers are sticking through the fingers on the gloves here, like they've ripped through. So I want to make sure I don't color or paint the fingers, the ends of the fingers on this, almost like fingerless gloves. A tour in Europe would be great. We've talked about doing, Essen just happened. We've talked about doing Essen before. But yeah, if we did like a multi kind of like local hobby store tour, that's another announcement I didn't talk about. WizKids has launched official paint events. You've seen them in the ads below here, where basically your local game store will get shipped a bunch of miniatures, and you'll follow a tutorial by myself on video with paints and paint in your store. So keep an eye out for that as well. Your local game stores, folks. So honored to be a part of all this wonderful stuff that these guys are doing. We've got some pretty awesome partners. Okay, as you can see, the pouches, the belt, and the glove are all now base coated in this heavy sienna color. I'm gonna wait on the main area because I don't know totally what I want to do there just yet. I think I want it to be a dark color, but I don't know what color. And I want it to be a little bit different than the heavy sienna, so we'll see. We'll see. Okay, back to this guy. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do heavy sienna for all the pouches on him. sorry, not the pouches, the belts. So I'm just gonna carefully, again, it's very small, basically just the width of my brush. So I'm carefully just doing one kind of pass like that to cover the belts in this heavy sienna color. There we go. Get the belt up top. And then I'll come back and I'll do that center area that's supposed to be that leathery kind of color, a light leather color. There. Okay, so the belts are done. Some of the details on these minis are so small. Okay, now that that's done, I'm gonna bust out the leather brown. Leather brown from Vallejo Game Color. A trip to Calgary for Comic Expo, always a good weekend. Oh, that'd be fun. I've never been to the Comic Expo in Calgary before. I am from the Toronto area, so Canadian stop would be awesome. That'd be fun. Okay, leather brown, wrong guy. I picked up the wrong mini. The brown in the center area is what we're looking for here. Here we go. And I just messed it up a little bit. Not too bad because the blue is still just base coated, so I'm not too upset about the fact that I just overbrushed onto the blue area, because I thought an area was supposed to be blue. It's not. It's supposed to be this tan color, so that's okay. There. All right, we'll let those dry. Doing good for time. Over an hour left, folks. Lots of time. Lots and lots. Okay, so we've basically base coated this guy except for his mouth and all that stuff, which we'll do probably after. I do want to decide what I'm going to do with his hair here, kind of like the big areas of kind of tough hair. So I think I'm going to mix a couple colors together. I think I'm going to mix some of the heavy brown with something else, and maybe it's going to be heavy brown and the heavy blue gray that I used before. I might mix those because then that'll give me kind of a brownish color, but it'll be a bit gray. I'll add a little bit of heavy sienna to that. We'll see what happens. Just mixing colors, folks. Just mixing fun colors here. We're going to test it. I want it to be a bit different. I'm going to test it here on the back fur. No, too bright. Too bright. Grab some black paint. I know it's a little heavy, but I do want it to be significantly darker. Almost like a gray color. There we go. That's kind of the color I want. You guys can't see what I'm mixing here. But that's kind of the color I'm looking for. It's a kind of a smoky, desaturated brown. Let's try that. See how that's going to go. I think that's going to be a bit better. Still not dark enough. And this is what you got to do sometimes. Just kind of, I choose the colors, but I don't like test paint before these. I kind of choose the colors I think will work. And then I like to solve those problems live, just so you folks see kind of my thought process and how I tackle issues as they rise. There we go. Cool. Yeah, that's cool. You can see it's a bit of a darker brown color, and then when I add a wash on there, it's going to be a black wash to that area. It'll do cool things. But that's kind of the color some wolves have. If you look at like a brown wolf, they've got this like grayish kind of tinge to some of their fur. Yeah, I like that a lot. It's just going to make it more interesting. Personally, I think so. I did get his ears, I think, which I didn't want to do. So I'll have to come back in there and pull those out again with the heavy brown. Perfect. All right. Don't want to get the face. I want to keep the face the color that it was, that heavy brown with the sepia wash, but all of the fur around it. And it'll also make the face kind of pop a little bit. That's kind of part of the, it's part of the tactic here. I'll probably end up dry brushing it all with the same color, and so it'll be a bit more subtle. But at least this gives it a bit of differentiation. There we go. Okay, so I like this color. I like what this is doing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use it on the fur on his forearm. And when it gets close to kind of the rest of the skin, I'm just going to kind of like stipple it. What stippling is just kind of like dotting it around so that it looks kind of natural, so that it doesn't just stop and look like a stripe on his back, for example. I'm just going to stipple it around, make sure I cover the fur in the middle, but it's just going to look a bit more natural rather than just doing a straight line up above his glove here, back of the elbow. Those are the only areas of fur. I think they are. And their limbs tend to be a little lighter, closer to the end of the limb as well. So we've got to keep that in mind as well. That's cool. Okay, I'm going to put him down, let that dry, and I'll come back in and I'll pull out his ears again. They're a little hard to see, so we'll wait till it dries. Sometimes it's easier to see when it's dry. Question: what's your favorite monster or monsters of D&D? Oh, that's a good one. Favorite monster, period? Dragons are classic. I have to say I love the dragons. The Kraken I gained a huge appreciation for and respect for when I ran him in our Storm of King's Thunder campaign for our players. That was wild and a lot of fun. Man, that is a great question. Beholders, of course, but they're a favorite of a lot of people. Again, I didn't know I loved giants until I ran them in against Storm King's Thunder, and now I absolutely adore giants. I don't know if I have a favorite, an actual favorite monster that I can think of. Okay, so I've mixed a little bit of the blue-gray with the black because I'm going to do the same that I did on that guy over on this one, where I'm going to basically base coat all around. Not going to get the ear this time. I'm going to put a base coat of, all of a sudden that got really wet. I don't like that. Of a darker kind of color. Actually, you know what? I'm actually going to try and use the color that I used in the other one. That dark kind of brownish color. And try and use that one on this mini and see what happens here. Oh yeah, that's cool. So I'm using some of the same colors. So I'm basically just swapping and using the brown, the dark brown on this, and then when I add a black wash to it, it'll really, that's actually pretty cool. I'm liking that. I am digging it. When I add a black wash, it'll darken it up, but at least it gives it a little bit of differentiation. It makes it a bit interesting. And again, wolves tend to have like multiple colorations or colors within their coat. They don't tend to be all one kind of color, so this actually works nicely to do that. And again, I don't want just a full kind of gray mini. I want it to be interesting and have depth and tone and all that kind of stuff. So I'm of course leaving his face that gray color. And then I'm also going to do the forearms that have all that fur on them in that kind of washed out brown color on the outside. Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad I thought of that. That worked out. Just figuring it out as we go, folks. Figuring it out as we go. Okay, so let all that fur dry. Once that fur is dry, then we can move on, and we're going to do some dry brushing and stuff. Fun stuff. All right. Okay, the coat around his kind of mane isn't quite done yet, so I'm going to go ahead and paint the hand of the poor individual that lost it, that he's carrying around. Oh yeah, I gotta love the owlbear. It is pretty absurd, but it's pretty awesome. We have an owlbear tutorial, of course, on our website for those of you that haven't seen it yet. For painting it, we had to do it purple because it looks kind of purple in the Monsters manual. Anybody else have some favorite monsters they'd love to share about? Oh, wrong werewolf. That's not the one with the hand. This one is the one with the hand. This guy's carrying a hand. Now, just being very careful now, because we do not want to go over onto the heavy brown areas. Imagine this hand's pretty fresh that he's got here. So it's going to be lighter. It's not going to be discolored or anything just yet. Imagine he just got it. And then we also have a fresh blood effect paint from Vallejo that we're going to use on the mouths and on the end of this hand here. You're closer to the end of the tutorial. Okay, so hand is painted. I used rosy flesh on that. I used something light and kind of a different tone. It's got pinks in it and such, just so it would really stand out. I just love that WizKids made him have a hand that he's carrying around. Okay, I am going to use my zero brush. I'm going to go in and grab some of the heavy brown, which is still wet on my palette. Again, thanks Vallejo for making awesome paint. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick out the ear. His ear is here, I think. It's kind of hard to see in all of the hair. I'm pretty sure it's there. And then his other ear is right here. So, because I had painted over it when I base coated. There. Those are the ears, I think. So, if you can see that, it's a little hard to see, but those are the ears. We're going to keep that color. And then I also wanted to just touch up the knee and the leg here because it got messed up from me handling it. Back of the leg. And it's going to continue to get messed up as I'm handling this thing, but I just wanted to make sure. There. Okay. Fun is this guy. I'm going to go in now with some more of that gunmetal, and I'm going to get all the little buckles on his pouches. Again, using my zero brush. Liches are awesome. Giants too. Devils, demons, lycanthropes, my favorite monsters. After following your frost giant tutorial, they've become my favorite. Right, Jack? It's amazing, right? Like, I wouldn't have even said that, you know, giants was even close to one of my favorite kinds of monsters in D&D. And then when I painted Harshnag, it kind of, you know, and used him in my campaign, it really kind of, it sounds silly, but kind of gave me more of a appreciation for giants. Okay, so I'm just grabbing the little tiny buckles on these with the edge of my brush, with a little bit of gunmetal there. I think that's the only metal left on the body other than the breastplate, of course, which I already did. Once all of that is dry, I will be able to, I'm going to put a wash on it, a black wash on that mane and on the armor. This guy is also still wet. As soon as that's dry, we'll do that. I'm also going to actually touch up inside these little hole areas in the garment where I overpainted with the blue. Just being careful not to hit the sides. Those ones are pretty good. Okay. Now, like I said, black wash, which I need some more of. Almost actually out. This black wash bottle has lasted me, I can't even tell you how long. These Vallejo paints last a long time. These dropper bottles just allow you to not waste so much. Okay, so on this mini, I'm going to use black wash on the mane that I just painted. Because that's really going to, again, bring out the detail again in that fur. You can see how it's darkened it down a little bit too. Makes it look really cool. So I'm just going to paint some black wash on there. I'm also going to do some black wash on this arm for the fur. And then all over the garments. So that is going to be over the clothing, so the blue, and the belts. I'm just going to go right over. I'm not too worried too much about getting it onto the legs and such because we've already used the black wash there. We just don't want too much. I am not going to put it, oh, I forgot to clean up that area of leather brown that I had there. I'm not going to worry about, I'm not going to get it on the leather brown because I'm going to use sepia wash on that. I don't want a black wash on that. But I need to go back in real quick with the heavy blue. And just there, touch that up there. And then once that dries, I might put a little bit more wash on that. But that is pretty much it for base coats on that, I think. My sepia wash is dry in my palette here, so I'm just gonna add a little bit more to my palette, a little drop of it, and use it on that front leather area. Might as well while I'm waiting for washes to dry. You can see now it's all very glossy because it's wet, but once that dries, it should dry pretty matte, and then we can move on. It's gonna be fun as the faces and the teeth. Small, tiny details. Okay. Now, I'm going to do the same here. All of it is dry, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a black wash to the fur on the head I'm not worried too much about getting black wash kind of between the fur and the armor, because it'll just continue, it'll further accentuate the kind of the dividing line between those two areas. Like that. Yeah, good stuff. In here, there, on the hair on his. I'm also going to use black wash on the gloves and any areas that are heavy sienna. Oh, and I forgot, geez, that I'm also going to do the armor, and the black wash will really bring out the armor because it'll seep in between all of those scales there and kind of really make it pop. Of course, arm hair here and along the back of the armor, which I forgot. I may run out of black wash this finally. Oh, that's sepia black. Tony Moreno says orcs has always been his favorite. They're awesome. And he said he just did his orcs, he just did his werewolves as well. And he loves the hand it's holding. I know, I love it too. Okay. It's the cool little details like that make these WizKids minis so awesome. Again, black wash all over the garments and the belt. Just using this black wash fairly liberally. Not too much, because again, you don't want to clog the details, but this will just make all of those sculpted details pop on those areas really nicely. Don't drop your minis. That's a pro tip. Jeez. All right, good. Got some black wash on the leg. Again, just grab a brush you haven't been using. Just kind of soak it up. The black wash will show up. It's not horrible, but it will show up on that brown fairly obviously. So, okay, that is looking really good. It's working. It's working. I dropped it right into the gunmetal paint. Look at that massive glob of gunmetal. That is why I usually have my palette over here, but I wanted to show you guys. So this is what we do. Dampen. Oh man, that is a mess. Well, I thought 2 hours was enough time, folks. Dang it. Hilarious. Okay, well, now we've got a big mess on the back there, so I think we can fix it fairly easily because a lot of the paint is still wet in the palette. Let's see how fast we can fix this. 6:09, less than an hour left, but should be plenty. So I'm just gonna go back in here, paint the fur on his back using that mix that I used earlier, and that should be fine. This is when I'm going to speed paint through this a little bit. The blue, heavy blue on his garments, and then we'll just add a little bit of wash there. Happens, folks. I'm sure it's happened to all of you. Right into the gunmetal. That was hilarious. Okay. Like I said, this is live, folks. Ali Saunders says, the hardest are the human skins or brown furred creatures. It's hard to make fur not all look the same after a while, so I add spots and stripes and color. Good call. It's a great way to differentiate furs. adding patterns and markings and things. Okay, so we're getting close to fixing that problem that I just had, the blunder. Just gotta finish base coating around the silver or the gunmetal that is on this pouch here. Okay, so now we're back to more or less where we were. Hilarious. Okay. Okay. There. Done. Yikes. All right. So then, once that's dry, we'll go ahead and we'll add another wash into that. Ay, ay, ay. All right. Okay. So this guy is looking pretty good. The wash is almost dry. Once it's dry, we're going to do some serious dry brushing here. There's a little area of blue on his, I don't know how blue got on his forearm here, but what are you going to do? Okay, so I think I'm going to use heavy blue-gray to dry brush this guy. And I'm going to start doing that now. So, grab my dry brush. Now this dry brushing, for those of you that don't know, is you are depositing paint on your brush. So I'm going to grab heavy blue-gray like this out of my palette. And then I'm going to wipe most of it off on a piece of paper towel. Again, seems counterproductive, but basically I only want it to be dry on the brush so that when I'm going across the detail, I am only depositing dry residue. And so basically what it's doing is just catching the highest parts of the miniature, the highest areas, and adding natural highlights to that mini. I'm going to do that all the way around this mini here. If you leave too much paint on the brush, it ends up being more of an overbrush, and it streaks, which in some cases works. Sometimes you want that, but in this case I don't. I'm going over some of the fur as well, but that is adding detail to the back here. Again, and you want to go against the texture, against the grain, if that makes sense, so that it's actually catching. It's not going between the recesses. Okay, once I've done this dry brush, though, I do think I'm going to go in with some heavy blue-gray just on a brush to add some kind of like key highlights in the musculature and stuff, because this isn't quite as what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's not as bright, I guess. It's not creating the contrast that I really want on this. But it's coming along. So now, as an extreme highlight, I'm going to take my 0, this is even a smaller 0 brush, and I'm going to get some heavy blue-gray, wet it a little bit, just dilute it a little bit, and I am going to come right in and pick out some of these highlights, where I want these highlights. So I kind of want it up above here, on his chest, some of the ripples here, and this will just make things pop for the tabletop. The side of his snout, tip of his snout, other side, his chin, ears. But you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just picking out all the little details so that they really pop. because, I mean, dry brushing is great, but it does kind of make everything kind of on the same plane, if that makes sense. Basically, it's going to catch all of the detail. So I always like to add one more kind of top, and I'm going to add lines here on his shoulders as if it's musculature, as if it's like, you can see his muscles are just along the back. Or really, and this is just a quick solution. You may want to like work this up a bit more, but you can see what it's doing to his back here. It's just making it look like it's rippled. I'm focusing on the center of the details, of the raised areas, and just accentuating the ripples in the muscle. The fibers of the muscle. I don't even know if that's a technical term. Do muscles have fibers? I don't know. And I might come in with a different color on some of the fur and do the same thing there as well. Pick out some of the abs. There. That works. Make sure you get the cheekbones. You can see how his face now really stands out. I want to get his bicep. And the muscles on his forearms. And then we're going to do palms of his hands and his fingers here as well. We have a question here. Riley, I know you only have an hour, but if you aren't on time limit, do you add the detail like veins and moles and dents? Yes. So I don't see on these minis, and I've said this a couple times before, and that is that when it comes to D&D minis, if I was playing like a strategy game or tactical strategy tabletop war game, and I'm painting a whole army that I'm going to use every time, I'm going to spend a lot of time on those minis because it's going to be the same, using the same guys all the time, and it's kind of worth that time. For me, when it comes to D&D monsters, I want to spend as much time as I need to in order for it to be kind of impressive and look good on the table, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time because they're literally going to face them like every once in a while, unless it's a player character miniature or a reoccurring baddie or like a reoccurring NPC. For me, it just doesn't make sense to be spending tons and tons of time on the detail for these minis. So I'm painting 2 minis in 2 hours. And for me, that's nice and quick, and I get kind of the level of detail that I want out of it. And then you can do other effects, like I'm going to add fresh blood to it. But I mean, this guy, you know, he looks good enough. Remember that these guys are going to be at 2 feet from the camera, or your player's eyes, I should say. And so that's pretty much how much detail should be in them for me. I might go ahead and finish this whole guy at this point, because I already have them. So I'm going to grab some bone white, off-white, actually, and I'm going to add a little bit to my palette, and I'm going to mix it with some heavy blue. So I can highlight the garment. And now I'm going to do the same thing I did. Again, this isn't necessarily, typically, you know, if you were doing like competition painting or whatever, you would go in and you would like work these up. But I'm just going to basically do little highlights and just highlight the ridges. Just quick. And these, again, they're very stark. They don't look like they blend too much, but that's okay. For me, anyways. For you folks, you may want to spend more time on them, working them up, but for me, it's about speed and quality and where the compromises are. You can use the edge of your brush. This is way too wet, so it's kind of going where I don't want it to go. You don't want it seeping into the recesses, but I'm going to use the edge of my brush and just hit some of these higher areas here, like that. And the blue is done. And next, I'm going to go ahead and highlight the leather area. I'm just going to use the regular leather brown pre-wash, right? And just highlight that a little bit in the front here, like that. And then I think I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do, see, I can't do inside the mouth really. All the gums are there. I am going to do a little line of tan for the gums. Question, do you use the minis in your campaign? I absolutely do. I absolutely do use. And Greshtar, thank you very much for hosting us. Very cool. I absolutely use a lot of the minis that we do here in our regular campaign, including our live streams. We have D&D live streams every Monday night at 7:30. Tomorrow night being one of them. Actually, we're back with Order of Dragon's Bane again tomorrow night. Okay, so I'm just going to do a line for his gum, which is really fine. I'm using a 0 brush for that. Messed up, went a little too far. Now it's on his cheek. Wipe that off. Good to go. I'm going to do a little bit of gum on the bottom. And I'm basically painting his teeth at this point, but it's just going to give you a bit of detail there. And then I'm going to go in with off-white. And get his teeth. That tan probably is dry by this point, but he's got these fangs here. It's a little wet, so it's spread too much. I'm going to whisk that up a bit. There. You can see the teeth really kind of, now I had a bleach bone to kind of do multiple kind of levels of teeth, but frankly, they're so small that a little bit of off-white is probably enough. There. Okay. Next, I am going to do his eyes. Usually I would do orange fire first and then moon yellow. I'm going to try and just go to moon yellow here, given time. But I would typically maybe do a dot of orange fire and then a dot of moon yellow, but moon yellow on its own might be enough because it's such a small eye. And again, try and get the best tip on your brush by rolling it as I put it in the palette. I'm rolling it to a tip into the color. Then coming in from the side, more or less, I'm going to just dot that eye. It's not coming there. Now I might go back in there and try to put a pupil in there, but that is insanity. There's another eye there. I keep going in there. I'm going to mess it up by trying to do too much, but there you go. I kind of like the pupilless eyes for werewolves, kind of like is in the subject matter. And then the last thing is to actually I already have highlights on the main area. I think I'm gonna call this guy pretty much done. I could highlight his belt as well. Maybe I'll do that and I'll come back and do that, but For right now, I really like the way that turned out. Pretty good. Okay, let's put him aside. Back to this guy who is still appears to be wet. Lord Ravenloft, I do usually paint a whole eye, so I'll paint the actual eye itself. I'll do a dot or a slit. It's typically, even on these size minis, I absolutely enjoy doing that, so I try to do it as much as possible. And this black wash doesn't want to dry. So while we're waiting for that black wash, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wash on the actual hand that he's carrying. I'm going to use a little sepia for that. Usually I would use a flesh wash, but again, didn't pull that color. So we're going to work with what we've got, and a sepia wash will do fine. Done. See, it just adds a little bit of depth to the hand. That's all we need. And then, of course, we'll add some blood and stuff to that as well, eventually. Because it's a little colder in here, it's taking a little longer for things to dry. I'm surprised this isn't dry just yet. I am going to, remember I had to come back and do the wash in here. So I'm going to come back and add a wash to the back area that was dropped, because I haven't done that yet. Just to bring the depth back in. There we go. And we're back to where we started on the back of that mini. While it's dry, I keep dropping them. While it's drying, though, I am going to. Yeah, that wash is still a little wet, so I'm gonna go in and do his mouth while I'm waiting. Gonna use tan, which is still in the palette, and it's nice and wet still. No spoilers, but did you send me some werewolves? I seem to remember getting some in a box. I don't know, actually. I don't think so. I don't think I've ever had werewolves. Are you talking about in our adventure boxes, Jack? Okay, there we go. And then, like we did on the other one, we're going to paint his teeth. Come in with some off-white. Now, I'm not going to do gums on this one because we have the tan under. It's a little wet. We have tan on the tongue, so I'm not too worried about the gums. But look, I'm just dotting. I'm basically using the edge of my brush and then just trying to see where the teeth details are so that I can catch the mouth on that thing. There. Might as well do the eyes too while I'm here. It's a bit too much paint on there. Lint on the end. This is the worst. Okay, let's try that again. Here we go. I'm committing. There. 1, 2. There we go. The eyes turned out pretty good on both of these. I usually mess up on eyes a little bit, but not this time. Now, a little dry brush on the brown. I'm going to use Heavy brown was the base, so I think I'm going to go back and do that. Add a little bit more to my palette. Grab my dry brush and do that a little bit. And then, although I'm not going to use my dry brush, I'm going to use a bit of a smaller brush just because the dry brush is a bit too wide and I know I'm going to get other areas that I don't want to. So just dry brush around here with the original base color prior to the washes we added. Yeah, these areas are very small, so I don't think I'm going to be able to dry brush much. So instead, what I'll do is I will use a detail brush, and I am going to add some bone white to my heavy brown. And I am going to do what I did with the other one. This might be the first time we're doing 2 minis in the 2-hour period. Not sure. Okay, so a little bit of water. Okay, let's see how bright this is. This might be too light, but we'll see. Yeah, it's too light. So we want to bring it down just a touch because we don't want it to be too stark a difference, because then it just looks like lines instead of highlights. So let's try this. That's a bit better. Basically, I'm just highlighting the musculature as best as I can, right on the edges. This is a bit different than the gray because the base coat is pretty dark, so we're just carefully going around the mini and picking out that was too much paint on the feet. Try and wipe that off. There we go, that worked. Get his ankle, back of his heel. Yeah, we're just going around, we're picking out all the highest areas and creating little highlights. Basically, I'm painting whole muscle groups. So his calf muscle that sticks out where it delineates, his heel kind of bone area, his toes, his shin. This is kind of an all over highlight based on his different muscle groups on his skin. This is fun. I like the highlighting part of it. Oh. This is where I think you get really creative and fun, and where it feels like you're really kind of doing art. That's the legs done. And then I will come in and do shoulder, biceps, triceps. And this back, we're just going to do lines like we did on the other one, just to show kind of like that it's kind of a ripped, muscled creature. Because these washes tend to muddy it up quite a bit. So now we're basically bringing more definition to the whole thing again. This whole shoulder is going to get it, and then this bicep will get it under it, and then like that. Cool. Tips of the fingers because they've lost some of their paint. They're almost down to the primer. And on the ears here, on the edge of the ears, the snout, the brow, and the cheekbones. There. Cool. All right, so that is that part. I'm gonna grab some black real quick for the snouts. Oh, I think I have black already out here. I do. I'm just gonna grab a little bit of black. For the snout. I should say the nose, not the whole snout, just the nose. There. Okay. This one too. I would say the adventure looking werewolf is probably easier to paint than this one, just because the surface areas that you have to paint are larger on this one than they are. Like this one's significantly kind of thicker and more muscled. You can see from that, from the other one. Okay, now I'm going to use a smaller brush, and I'm going to dry brush the, actually, you know what? I'll finish the skin. So for skin, now I'm going to go into my lighter mix that I made with bone white and with heavy brown, and I'm just going to hit the top edges of some of these areas. Basically putting in a single line just to show, sometimes even just a dot, just to show kind of final edge, extreme highlight, because otherwise it looks a little flat like that. Back of the calf would get some. Little dot there. Top of the quad would get a line. Ankle, heel, top of the toes. Heel on this side. Okay. Good. On his back, probably have like a line here and a line here, down here. And here we're just doing little extreme highlights. On this, I'm going to grab his knuckles on his hand. All of them. Thumb. That turned out. Tips of the fingers. Although they should be claws there. Don't know if we have enough surface area to make the claws stick out. Snout, forehead, top of the snout. Cool. I think that's it for the skin and fur. I think. Yeah. I'm good with it. Yeah, like Bob Ross says, you don't mess up, you just paint over it. It's so true. Okay, I am going to grab my brush here, and I'm going to do some gunmetal. Kind of an overbrush, dry brush. So it's not totally a dry brush because it's still wet, but I'm just wanting to bring some of that luster back into the armor that we lost because of the wash. You can see I'm just kind of running my brush over that area. Careful not to get it onto the skin or the fur, but we just want to bring that through a bit more, like that. And now I'm going to highlight the fur, the mane. I think I'm going to use leather brown for that. So I'm basically going to get it onto my brush. This is going to be more of an overbrush again because I want it to be fairly stark. But basically, I'm going to take the edge of my brush. You can see some of the paint has actually rubbed off on there. I'm just going to do this. And that is going to just catch the top. I'm using the edge of the brush again. It's just going to catch the edge of the detail on the hair. Like that. That's all I want. I want to make sure that it doesn't really get into the recesses, but I want it to be fairly strong, which is why I'm doing more of an overbrush, kind of a wet dry brush rather than a true dry brush. You also want to leave some dark in the kind of the recess between the face and the mane. And then I will come back in and I'll add some more. Adding some to the back hair, dry it off just a touch because now the detail isn't as deep or as pronounced, so you're not going to get the same sort of effect on the other hair areas. Okay, there. Okay, same thing with the blue again. I'm going to go in with some heavy blue, mix in a little bit of off-white. And I'm going to paint in some lines here, just along here. Just to kind of show, using a bit of the edge of the brush, especially on these deeper kind of areas, you can really utilize the edge of the brush to catch the top of the fold here. But that's as far as I need to go in my opinion, or as far as I want to go on this. I don't need any more for my purposes. There. I'm going to go back in as well and add a bit more of gunmetal to the buckles because that black wash really kind of took away the luster. It's too wet. Too wet. Yeah, it took away some of the luster on those buckles. So, okay, looking good. All right. I'm going to go in with a little bit of off-white, and this is going to be a serious dry brush. This, I don't want it to be wet at all, but just the ends of the fur here now. I'm just going to do a quick little, because I find, like I said, wolves closer to the edge of their fur and hair tend to go a little lighter. So even on the limbs, so I'm just going to do this a little bit to give a bit further of a highlight, as well as around the feet a little touch. Just want it to be a bit lighter than the rest. Jeez. See how it's lightening the edge or the bottom half of the feet? I just want them to be a bit lighter than the rest. The hands a bit. The fingers, okay. Now, I got gold out and everything for this as well. We only have 15 minutes left. For this, now we're almost there. We are going to make it. So we're pretty close to the end on that. I'm going to grab some tan with my 0. Now again, tan being Vallejo's, one of Vallejo's Game Color colors. And I'm going to use that tan with a little bit of heavy sienna mixed in to highlight the pouches. Basically just going around the edges and highlighting the main kind of details in these pouches. That's just going to bring out the detail just a bit, or just enough, so that it stands out. Bottom edge, kind of the flap on this one, flap on that one, bottom edge, like that. And then with the belt, I'm going to do a line on the bottom, like that, and a line on the top. That was way too pronounced. Too much. It's too wet. That's what happens when you have a really wet brush, when you're trying to do kind of this subtle detail. Let's try that again. There we go. That's better. On the top and along the bottom. In some cases, if it's a sharp edge, you can use the edge of your brush or just a little line. There we go. And just inside here. And then that way you can see the pouches kind of stick out a little bit now. Sorry, I'm also going to need that color over here. So I'm going to do the kind of the ties on the bottom of the glove here that he's got, as well on the folds, the major folds on this glove. Do a couple of just rough highlights on the knuckles, just so it looks, gives that glove a little bit more depth as well. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, that worked out. And now, I did get the gold out, so I'll use a little bit of gold. Might as well. And then we'll get to the fun part. The fun part's going to be the fresh blood. Okay, so glorious gold here. Grab a little on my 0, and this guy had, I think, all these little in the, like the box, not the, yeah, the box art had all these little guys being gold. So I'm going to go around and using the edge of my brush, careful not to get it anywhere else, because I already did, just pick out those details. And it's just these little details that really kind of make a miniature pop. Too much. There. Now I got some where I shouldn't have got some, so I'm going to go back in with some of my sienna, my heavy sienna and my tan mix, and just kind of go back in and just touch that up there. There, done. Okay. So that's gold there, and then there was another area I wanted to put some gold as well. Oh yeah, it was around the edge. There's these little rings around the edge of the pouches, which in the box are like that. So I'm just going to go in almost like little stitches along the sides. And these are tiny little details, but they really help a miniature come together. You know, from a distance, you just see the glitter, and it gives it really cool detail. There. That's it for that. That's all I need the gold for. But, you know, you can see how that gauntlet looks a lot cooler with a little bit of those gold kind of rivets or styling. Okay. I think that's done for that. I'm going to do, might as well on this one, do what I did before with the tan and the heavy sienna on the belt, just to finish that off. This is a very thin belt, so I'm only going to do it on the top. And I'm using the edge of my brush Yeah, that worked out nice. That was too much. Spoke too soon. Spoke way too soon. It does have a buckle on here, but I can't see the detail too well, so I'm just going to leave it. But okay. Now, we're not going to do the bases, but you can do the bases however you feel necessary on these. I am going to paint, the last thing I'm going to do is paint the toenails black, or the claws on the feet black, because my hands, they rub them right off otherwise. So I'm going to wait to do that. But what I am going to do is I am going to do a dot of bone white right in the middle, of course, of the arm, because of course he would have bone stuck in there. Pretty gross. And then once that's dry, we're going to add some fresh blood all over this bad boy. All right. How's everybody doing out there? You all right? My back is getting me a little bit. That's what happens over 40, folks. How's everyone doing out there? Everyone all right? Good stuff. Okay. Fresh blood. These are fun. This is the fun part. All right, so we have fresh blood from Vallejo. That is a game effect. So we're just going to put it out. It is basically just a color. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it to stipple it in areas around the miniature. I'm going to use my zero brush here, another one of them, and I'm going to load my paint with this fresh blood. And it just dries a little differently than red paint does. But this guy definitely needs a bunch of blood around the end of this stump. So we're just gonna like do that. And he's also gonna have blood, of course, on his fingertips. And all along his hand here. And then on the sides of his mouth, kind of on his teeth, but we don't want to wreck all that awesome. So we're going to kind of stipple it along the side of his mane. It's obviously going to be down his chest. Now, again, you don't want to wreck all of the awesome paint job you did, cover it in blood, but just enough to get the idea that this guy means business. In the art, they also have some on the base, so you can like have a drip on the base as well. I'll put a little bit kind of, again, drops of it stippled onto his clothing. This guy got a hold of somebody. This one as well. I'm going to do both. Why not? This is going to be right on the edge of his hands, stippled up. Not solid. Maybe solid on the fingertips. But he also got his hands on someone here. There's something, and it's Halloween. Lots of blood. Okay, again on his mouth, so we're going to put it on the side, on his snout. And then down his chest area. Don't want it off to the side so much. And then we'll also put it down his front kind of thing. Yeah. There we go. Okay. Awesome. Last but not least, as I mentioned before, we only have 4 minutes left, so I'm going to go ahead and paint all of the toe claws. And of course, what I would do as well with this blood is water it down a bit. I would get red ink or this blood effect, and I would like spray it onto the mini. We did that before with something, I can't remember, I think it was dirt on something, but I'm going to go around, get all these claws real quick before we have to wrap up. And then on this one as well. That, and then one more. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow night for Order of Dragonsbane, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on our Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. That is live D&D with the RealmSmith crew, which we're very excited about. And there we go. These are your 2 werewolves for the evening. I wanted to make sure we did some happy Halloween sort of creepy stuff. And they turned out all right. I will be posting photos in our Instagram of these a little bit more close up if you need detail or a bit of a closer look. But that is how they look. And I think they turned out all right. Again, tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Order of Dragonsbane. Next week on Sunday, we will be doing another of these. We do them every Sunday at 7 and from 5 to 7 Eastern, 4 to 6 Pacific, I think. And I think next week we will do maybe the Wyvern. Wyvern might be next week, I think. We got our spooky out of us this week, so next week maybe we'll do the Wyvern or something else like that. Hey, Inky Ignorance, just wanted to say hi. Again, if you missed our Kickstarter, still interested in looking at some of the items in that or our adventure boxes, go to realmsmith.tv/Kickstarter. Click on the little Miss the Campaign button, and you'll be able to take a look there. Thank you again, everyone, for hanging out. It's been an awesome night. Happy Halloween to everyone. Be safe and have fun and scare the crap out of each other. It's a great time of year to do that. All right? You guys have a good one. Take care. Good night.